Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Schumann, and I am from RJ Julia Booksellers in the beautiful town of Madison, Connecticut. And I get the honor and the privilege to kick off this incredible event. And I actually get to introduce you to the bookstore just a little bit. And I'm going to make you laugh because I have a script of what I was going to say, and I've been practicing it for days. But just a little bit ago, I decided it wasn't going well. So I'm going to speak from my heart about a bookstore that I love more than anything. Like I said, RJ Julia Booksellers is located in the beautiful town of Madison, Connecticut. We are celebrating our 30th year, and we are going strong and fabulous, all because of our owner, Roxanne Cody. It is a magical place, and to me, probably one of the best bookstores in the entire country. Any question that you have, you can find the answer here in this beautiful, beautiful bookstore. Everyone here is so knowledgeable about books. We read everything from nonfiction to poetry to kids' books, everything. There is someone in the store who's an expert at it. We pride ourselves on our customer service and our kindness. Everyone who comes through the door matters to us, and we love everybody. And now with an online store and in this virtual world, we get to take our message and our love of books to the entire country. So it is so amazing to share this event with all of you. And tonight you will join Cynthia Germanotta for an inspiring evening filled with personal stories and the power of kindness. So Cynthia, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank you very much for this honor and privilege.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Karen, and to the RJ Julia Bookstore for co-hosting tonight's conversation with us. I think, Karen, speaking from the heart is always the best, and it makes me want to visit your bookstore even more. I'd like to kick off with a very special congratulations to all of our Channel Kindness authors for making the New York Times bestsellers list. Congratulations. We are so proud of each and every one of you for bravely sharing your stories to the world. And tonight we're joined by Perri Easley, Josh Holland, and Taylor Parker, all of whom courageously shared stories of compassion, actionable kindness that benefit ourselves, those around us, and also the world. And I'm so honored by the inclusive movements that you've created and continue to inspire by the stories that you authored in Channel Kindness. You're each making this world a kinder, braver, and more just place. And for that, we thank you. So to kick it off, I'd love to invite each of you to share a bit about yourselves and your background, as well as your experience contributing to Channel Kindness. So let's start with Taylor. And Taylor, if you could also please introduce yourself using your pronouns.
Of course. Hi, Cynthia, and thank you, everyone who is watching. My name is Taylor Parker. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I was a Channel Kindness reporter in the cohort of 2018. I am a graduate of the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy for both my bachelor and my master's. And that was also where I met the Born This Way Foundation team for the first time as a Channel Kindness Award recipient in Indianapolis for 2017. Since all of that, I've interned with the foundation, and I'm now working as a program associate. And I am so happy to be sharing this moment with all of you and to be spreading these stories of kindness that I believe in wholeheartedly. So thank you so much, Cynthia, for having me here. And thank you, RJ Julia.
Thank you, Taylor. We're so happy to have you. Josh, if you could just give us a little bit about your background, as well as your experience contributing to Channel Kindness.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here and to be sharing this really poignant conversation with you all. My name is Joshua Holland. My pronouns are he, him, his. I've been with Born This Way Foundation since 2017. I was in the inaugural Channel Kindness cohort. When I started with Channel Kindness, I helped initiate Channel Kindness Radio, which was a podcast series where I would interview nonprofit organizations and people in the nonprofit realm, people making a difference in their communities. And I'm now the digital assistant for the foundation. And I'm so honored to have a story in Channel Kindness, to be telling a story about Zoe Terry, a young girl who is increasing representation through dolls. And I'm just really excited to be here.
Thank you, Josh. And I remember being on your radio show, and I think that's where it all started, with you spreading the word and sharing stories. Perri, moving on to you, a little bit of background about yourself and your experience contributing to the book.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you so much, Cynthia, for the introduction. Thank you to everyone joining this webcast. My name is Perri Easley. I'm 19 years old. I use she, her, hers. I go to Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut, where RJ Julia is actually my campus bookstore. I am was a part of the 2018 cohort of the Channel Kindness Reporter Program with Taylor, where I reported stories on the Broadway musical The Prom. I did a story on Global Citizen Festival in 2018, as well as sharing a personal story about my mental health journey in Channel Kindness. So I am very excited to be here, and I'm so excited to be a part of this discussion.
Thank you, Perri. It's going to help so many people. And let's stay with you for a minute, Perri. You created #AsIs, which is a social mental health movement that encourages people to celebrate who they are as is, or maybe as my daughter would say, celebrate the fact that you were born this way. How did this idea come about? And what were the first steps you took to start this wonderful movement?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, As Is really came from my healing journey. Following my diagnosis with depression, finally admitting to myself that I was a person living with depression, I knew that it would be crucial to really own all parts of my identity and of myself, flaws and all. And with that, I knew that there was no shame at all with admitting that help might be needed. And I knew that this would be something that would help others too, as I had other friends who also were living with mental illnesses, whether that be depression, bipolar disorder, or anxiety. So with my junior year high school advisor, Dr. Brian Mary, we did an independent study on social movements where I really delved to As Is and really looking to find and create a platform for people to be open and honest about their mental health. That spread into my networks, my greater social media networks, talking to people, just giving them the overview and the premise of As Is, hearing how they responded to that too. And yes, that is the story of As Is.
Well, it's a very courageous journey that you've taken. I know that my daughter refers to something called radical acceptance, which I think is something you went through. You accepted who you are, whatever struggles you might have. And when you're at that point, you can begin to heal and move forward. And I'm really proud of you for that. And you had some support around you with your advisor, which is even better. So congratulations on that and on this beautiful story. Josh, let's turn to you. Your story is about 10-year-old Zoe. I think she was 9 at the time, right? When she created Zoe's Dolls to get brown skin dolls into the hands of young girls who look like her. What inspired you to tell Zoe's story?
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that question. First of all, I just want to say that representation is so crucial in our movies and our television and music and pop culture, but also in our own communities and healthcare and schools and in our own communities and our work environments. Like you said, I met Zoe when she was about 10 or 11, I think, maybe even 9 at the time. I was 19. So this was a few years ago. But I just remember meeting this girl, and this young girl. And not only was I blown away by her poise and by her wanting to make a difference at such a young age, but I was so taken aback that somebody so young had their finger on the pulse of an issue that affects so many people. I remember talking to her mom at the time, and she mentioned that there were a lot of Black dolls on the market that were essentially white dolls with black paint on them. They had very Eurocentric features as opposed to Afrocentric features. The hair was always straight, and the dolls didn't really look like her, and she couldn't really identify herself in these dolls. And the reason, Cynthia, why representation is so important is because when you see someone who looks like you succeed, and no matter what field you're in, what it tells you is that because this person can do it, I can do it. And it's so important. Me being a young Jewish musician, I was very fortunate to have so many influences to look up to, producers, musicians from, Mark Ronson, Amy Winehouse, Rick Rubin, Paula Abdul, Michael Bolton. I mean, the list just goes on and on. But, for other marginalized communities, the LGBTQ plus community, the Black community, Latinx community, AAPI community, and so many other marginalized communities, those lists are not as extensive. And that's just the reality. I also, and not to stay on the entertainment world for too long, but we recently lost Chadwick Boseman, who was such an iconic figure, so many young Black boys and girls looked up to him as a superhero. And something that I kind of realized after he passed is, wow, we really don't have too many Black superheroes, at least on the forefront of popular culture, at least ones that most people know about. And on the topic of superheroes, there are plenty of superheroes in our own communities, in our schools, in our healthcare, like we said, and we need to do our duty to uplift those voices when and where we can, listen and share their stories.
For sure. And I would say Zoe is a superhero. I mean, she was only 9 years old when she started her company for the dolls. And that's a very, very impressionable age. And you're impacted very deeply by things that happen to you. But she took a very challenging situation and turned it into something that's helping other people now. And so I think she's a superhero as well. Taylor, moving on to you, you wrote about practicing accessibility as an important and powerful act of kindness. You're also, you've bravely shared your own story about navigating disability. Why did you choose the service project that you wrote about in your story?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. There are so many different points that I'll try to get through quickly and concisely. But first and foremost, living life as a person with chronic illness and disability, a lot of people who want to help or want to understand don't really know where to begin. And the first step is helping them find resources to learn more. It doesn't necessarily have to be me sharing my entire experience detail for detail, but people don't know what they don't know. And there's no shame in that. And so it was really important for me to talk about this issue so that I could bring it to the minds of people who were just completely unaware. I was completely unaware for most of my life. The backstory, if you will, was I was a junior in high school 6 or 7 years ago. And my classmate came up to me, and she's since allowed me to share her story. But she asked me if I could give her money so that she could go buy a box of tampons. Her father had been laid off a couple weeks ago, and he was the only source of income her family had. And she had a mother and 5 other sisters who all needed these products, and they could barely figure out how to put food on the table, let alone handle these, luxury items that we need. And so I, definitely helped her where I could. But then the next month, she came to me and said, he still hadn't found a job. They not only needed these extra products, but they were also facing very intense food insecurity. And so it really, I connected them with all the community resources that I could find, but it really started to make me think about, how many people could be experiencing this. And so I did my research and I found out that about 1 in 8 people who menstruates experiences this kind of issue regularly. And that is just absolutely wild. And so I continue to do my research and support organizations that are helping out to solve this issue, such as Ant Flow, which is like a 1-for-1 company where you can buy your own products and they'll donate the same amount to people who are experiencing that need. But then when I went to university, my university is right in the middle of a food desert. And within that food desert, it is also very hard to find these products that we need. And the bathrooms didn't have, the little coin machines stocked in my whole time at the university. And so I figured if there was ever something that I could do to help my classmates, it would be to make sure that none of them have to leave, their place of education or leave class and go home because they forgot to bring a tampon. And so I was so grateful to put together this Channel Kindness Award project with Born This Way Foundation with Peace First to meet my classmates where they were at and offer this support for them individually, and also put these in the different offices around campus so that if students didn't know where to go, their first resource desk would have some.
And I know this has expanded. I know there was one point where you had, you were at one of the events or concerts and fans brought so many products to you.
Yeah,
it was a little bit about that.
Yeah, the night before the event was Lady Gaga's concert in Indianapolis, and she, along with the event hall, put out a message encouraging fans to bring these donations to the concert so that we could collect them the night before. And so me and my dear friend Sylvia Thomas stood out front of the concert hall, holding these boxes of tampons, dancing around to Lady Gaga music, trying to get everyone, excited. And if they didn't have anything to donate, that was totally fine. But we were going to let them know that this is a widespread issue. And we felt so silly doing it, but we were able to collect over 6,600 products that we could donate the next day. And the power that we have as individuals, or the power that we have collectively, can do so much good. And there was no way that project would have been half as successful without the push that we had from the Indianapolis community that came out that night.
So great that could happen. And you've done a wonderful thing here for young women. As it is, there's a stigma associated with this topic. And when you're younger, and your body is changing anyway, you're very, very self-conscious. So you've just done a great thing by raising awareness around this. And also, Taylor, as you said, in your story, once you become an everyday philanthropist, you will never look back. And that has really stayed with me. And each and every one of our Channel Kindness authors is an everyday philanthropist. And I'm so proud of you for shining a light on the importance of acceptance, of inclusion, of representation, these beautiful stories that we have heard. And I'd like to talk a little bit further about why you feel it's important for us to lean into these topics. And let's start with Josh.
Definitely. And Cynthia, thank you so much again for asking this question. I think first, I just want to define, what it means to be an ally. And according to Forbes, an ally is anyone who supports or empowers another person or group. So we might be wondering, how do we be a good ally? How can we support these people or groups of people? And I think it's first important to do your research, read articles, read books. But in addition to that, I think it's important to listen, and not just passively listen, but actively listen to understand. Surround yourself, and this is the most important part, surround yourself with a diverse group of people. Share your stories, listen to their stories, because that, I think, is the best way you can truly get a feel for their experience. While you might not ever completely understand, you can definitely put in the work to try. And also, I think it's important to, as you do this, not demand emotional labor from people. Sometimes people aren't always comfortable sharing their story, but if you feel comfortable enough with a friend and you put in the work and you've done your research and you're then able to, you still have questions, I think then it's appropriate to ask. And there's also great ally guides online. I can actually put one in the chat if it will let me, or I can do it
that would be
afterwards.
Great.
Of course. And there are many guides like this online, just starting with like even a simple Google search, but this one I really liked. but yeah, I think surrounding yourself with other marginalized voices is the best way to develop groups of people that you can learn their stories and have them learn your stories as well.
So important, Josh, to keep our hearts and our minds open now, open to differences, to having those hard conversations. Perri.
Can I jump in and add something to that real quick?
Of course.
Speaking from my experience as a disabled person, I just want to encourage people to search any questions that they have, because, any question that you may have is not, or any question that you might want to ask, it won't be the first time that question was asked. And it is so much easier to learn on your own than to even, wait until you can talk to someone and then take the time to learn from them. And also, it is totally okay to acknowledge that you are not super knowledgeable on something, or you're unaware of an issue. It is, our natural default to be embarrassed or try to respond with pride. But it is more than okay to practice vulnerability. And I encourage everyone who is an ally to various communities to prioritize that in their work.
Thank you for that, Taylor. So important now to lean into our vulnerabilities. Perri, your thoughts on why it's important to lean into these topics now?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much, Josh and Taylor, for offering your input on this, as this is an incredibly important issue. And just to echo off of what Josh said about representation, it is so important. I know that it would have been so much easier for me to be honest about my mental health if I saw people that looked like me talking about their struggles with anxiety or depression or what that not be. Mental health is still very much stigmatized in the African American community, as with other marginalized communities. So it is so, so, so important to share your stories, to be vulnerable, and to be open and honest about yourself and your journeys, because not only will that help you, but that would also help other people in your communities and beyond, which is also a great way to eliminate the mental health stigma.
So true, Perri. And we need to be aware of those cultural differences. Not everybody grew up the same way, with the same values and the same ways of talking about things, or even not talking about them at all. So what you said is so important. Taylor, just in closing out this section, any final comments on leaning into these topics?
Absolutely. I think inclusion and education are paramount to accessibility, especially when you get to topics like menstruation, which are considered taboo. And I'm sure there are, people that will see that my story's in the book and wonder, oh, like, why are they talking about that publicly? That's a behind closed doors type of thing. But, it's such an important thing to talk about, because, like I said earlier, people don't know what they don't know. And, if you are unaware that, people might be experiencing this, there's really not a way that you can be active in helping. And also, as far as inclusion goes, it's really important to be intentional about the language we use with menstruation, because not all women menstruate, and not all people who menstruate are women. There are some cisgender women that don't menstruate, and trans women do not menstruate. And there are people that menstruate that are not women at all, such as myself. I am a transgender non-binary individual. And I understand that when people talk about menstruation, they talk about, access and equality for women, because this has been a women's issue for so long. But it's really important to be intentional about our language, so that we can be actively inclusive and make sure that no one feels like they are grouped into something they shouldn't be grouped into, or left out by this very, very important conversation.
Yes. And I think, Taylor, that it really shows the power of storytelling. I mean, that's what this book is all about, that we're having some difficult conversations that people might be thinking about, but they feel very uncomfortable talking about it. So in a way, it's giving them permission to have those conversations and giving them more confidence to do that through reading stories like yours. Well, I can't thank you all enough for being vulnerable, for sharing your wisdom with us. And it's so important to remember that we're all in this together, and that it's important to also prioritize our own self-care. And before we dive into some questions from the audience, I'd like to not only ask the audience this, so please feel free to send us some questions, but also our panel. How are you taking care of yourselves? And Perri, let's start with you.
Yes. I am practicing self-care by really diving into mindfulness. I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a mindfulness course this semester, taught by Rabbi David and Tyler Taylor, where we learn different strategies and ways to practice mindfulness. This is not just meditation, it's also mindful movement, mindful conversations, journaling. And this has been so helpful as I've been trying to implement a self-care practice for such a long time, but nothing has really stuck, or did at the time, because I was still prioritizing work over my well-being. But just knowing that there are so many ways to practice mindfulness, whether that be even just paying attention to the sounds, or feeling the sensations of your feet on the ground. These are just some of the many ways that you can practice mindfulness and self-care, not only every day, but just any moments of the day as well.
But do you find, Perri, that doing something like that every day, like having something that works for you and having a routine, can be helpful to you?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Especially in these tumultuous times, where there is uncertainty all around, it has been really helpful for me having a daily routine, specifically one that actually focuses on my well-being. So I would encourage anyone in the audience to really find a self-care routine that works for you, whether or not it is cooking or walking or meditating, something that you can do in the day just to remind yourself that you are here, you are present, you are alive and breathing, and that.
And and when you take care of yourself, you can better be there for others. So be patient, everyone. And you don't find the thing that works for you right away, so you have to try different things, but it's worth it for sure. Josh, how are you taking care of yourself now?
Thanks so much for asking this question. I think it's a question that we all should ask ourselves. I think it's so important to find what you love and to do it every day. For me, it's music. It's writing music. I do actually enjoy social media a lot. Not only is it my job, but it's what I love to do. But I try to put my phone on airplane mode at least for 1 hour in the day to try to get away from that whole world. It's funny. I actually I wrote a song and like a bit of a poem about it called Airplane Mode, and some of the lyrics were: "Sometimes life can shake the table. Couldn't disturb me since I left my bags behind. A little rocky, but I'm stable. A little turbulence can't shake my peace of mind." And what that is about is not only shutting off when you have to. I mean, it's important to stay in tune with what's going on in the world, but I think it's so important to be able to step back for at least an hour. Try to get outside. I love going for walks, socially distanced walks. Remember to #kindly mask, which was our big campaign of Born This Way Foundation to remember to wear a mask. Try to get outside if you can. Like Perri said, try to get into a routine, get into a groove that works for you. And then once you find that routine that works best for you, just try your best to do it every day. If you can't do it every day, or if you miss a day, don't be hard on yourself. Just do your best, and you'll be rocking and rolling.
Thanks, Josh. And also thanks for the lyrics. They're very, very, very impactful. Taylor, how are you taking care of yourself these days?
It is an active effort, I will tell you that.
I hear you.
In these, #trying times, it's been really important for me to reevaluate the standards that I set for myself. Before the pandemic, I was the type of person who would be, going all day. And when I lay down, I would just, fall asleep from exhaustion immediately. And now with, us being home all day and spending so much time in front of our screens for work, for school, and then also, to decompress, whether we're watching something streaming, it's so important that I set realistic expectations for myself. And so rather than, the night before putting together the list of, in a perfect world, I would get this done and this done and this done, and I'll wake up and I'll work out immediately, and then I'll go shower, and then I will cook myself a healthy breakfast and all the things that I want to do. I have to be very intentional about not putting too much on my plate, so that, if there's something that I can't do on my list, that I don't get, super upset with myself or disappointed that I was unable to meet those standards. But instead, I set attainable goals. And, sometimes my to-do list for the day is just, wake up, work, and go to sleep. And anything else I do in the meantime is, extra. It's a benefit. And so I'm very grateful to be in the position where I have things to look forward to every day, whether it's my coworkers at Born This Way Foundation or video calls with my mom and my siblings. But it's really important for me to be very intentional about those to-do lists and to minimize the tasks that I set for myself.
That's great that you found some balance. I mean, what you're describing, I think, might be one of the hardest things that everybody's had to face, is that our daily routines, as we once knew them, are upside down. In some cases, there are no routines anymore. So we've had to find them, and, time doesn't mean anything sometimes. If you used to wake up at 6 and now you wake up at 10, well, that's okay. That's the beginning of your day. So being kind to yourself. Well, we're getting a couple questions coming in now. And Taylor, I want to address the first one to you, which says, I want to be engaged in my community, but it's hard to find volunteer opportunities with the restrictions set by the pandemic. How can I find ways to get involved at a distance?
This is a lovely question, and it is so exciting because this is what I studied in school. So to give a little background there, I got both my bachelor's and my master's in philanthropic studies from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. And I'm going to say philanthropy again. I know that, I've been repeating that word, but the way we define it at the school is any kind of voluntary action for the public good. And that can be, donating a bunch of dollars, or it can be holding the door open for someone. And so if you are doing anything or if you are doing anything voluntarily to benefit others, you can consider yourself an everyday philanthropist as well. And there are so many different ways to practice philanthropy and volunteer at a distance, whether that is a letter writing campaign that you can get engaged in. One of our organizations that we work with, Find Your Anchor, is always accepting notes that they can put in their boxes for people that might be experiencing a mental health crisis. And those notes don't have to be, full-grown letters, but they can just be a note saying, you are loved and you are valued, even if it doesn't feel like it in this moment. Other ways to get involved at home might be looking to see if there are any food banks in your area that need produce. And if you have space to garden, you can create that yourself and donate that there. There are so many different ways that you can volunteer, your various different habits. If you have a particular skill or trade or something that you do well, I can almost guarantee you that there is someone out there who could use some help with that. And so whether that is offering to help someone increase that skill, or offering to do that for an organization or a civil society group, there are a plethora of ways to get involved. So you can check resources like Volunteer Match, or just look into the organizations in your community to see what is there for you and what you can take advantage of to benefit the place where you live and your people.
Thank you, Taylor. Such great advice. Josh, I have a question for you, which reads, I've always dreamed of becoming a writer, but it can be so hard to take that first step. What advice do you have for an aspiring writer?
I love this question. And Taylor, by the way, I just noticed your Rubik's Cube earrings. Those are so fabulous. I love those. I think, for anyone who wants to be a writer and is looking to take that first step, try to write every day. It could be one thing, whether it's a tweet, a song, a poem, a short story, or Cynthia, I know you keep a gratitude journal. I know that helps a lot of people. Also, I think that as writers and even artists, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have everything we write be great. But it's important to know that not everything you write is going to be great. You know, there's this analogy I remember hearing in college about letting the tap water run. Your first couple stories, you know, you have to kind of wait for all the bad stuff to come out before you write something that you're really proud of. And I think that by doing this process as much as you can, you will become a better writer, and you might even end up having your story published in a book like us. You know, you never know. So just if you truly love it, just water that flower every day.
Oh, that's beautiful. You know, and I would also add, check out channelkindness.org, which is our digital platform for writing. We have an introductory class on how to write for Channel Kindness. So that's also an option if you wanted to check that out. So I have one final question for Perri, and if there's others, please feel free to send them in now. So Perri, the question is, how do I help a friend in need of mental health support or start the conversation?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. This is something that I'm incredibly passionate about and really believe needs to be at the forefront of conversations. I'd say the absolute number one first thing to do is to listen non-judgmentally. It is an act of courage and an act of bravery for someone to tell a friend or a loved one that they're going through difficult times. And what you can do as a friend is to listen to them without offering any judgment or any advice. Just simply listening to them and really understand what they need. Not only is this incredibly helpful, and not only will that help the friend and the loved one in return, but it's just also a really great way of practicing gratitude and kindness. Another thing I would highly recommend everyone to do is to take a mental health first aid course. They teach such amazing tools in terms of how to help a friend, whether or not that is a young person or an adult who is dealing with a mental health crisis. These are just some ways that can really help people out and in order to really be there for them.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm just checking with the team here too to see if we have a few more questions. So we'll just give that a minute.
In the meantime, Cynthia, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
How does it feel for you as co-founder and president of Born This Way Foundation to have our first book out?
Well, it's pretty amazing. I never imagined being in this place, certainly not in my lifetime. I'm so proud of all of the authors that have contributed to this. There would be no book without it. I'm so proud of our team. I'm proud of my daughter because I feel that her sharing her story many years ago started this entire movement, because we heard from other young people around the world that they had similar struggles that she had had, and they wanted to change things and make a difference and be different. So it was very empowering. And so the whole process is just so wonderful. Thank you for asking that. And Taylor, you're part of it. You're all part of it tonight, yourself and Perri and Josh. So thank you for all of the great contributions. And I do have another question that is to Taylor and Josh. Josh, I'll turn to you first. The question is, have you had negative experiences when sharing your vulnerability, and how do you deal with it?
Of course. I think it's first of all, it's totally normal. You know, growing up, I grew up in a traditional Jewish family. My parents did absolutely everything they could for me and my brother growing up. But there were, some hard conversations that I had to have. Sometimes I dressed a little eccentric, or maybe they didn't like, my dad being a music teacher didn't like a certain chord choice or something that I would do. And we would kind of bump heads a little bit. But you know what? I think that whenever you're in those situations that are a little heated, you just have to give your parents the grace and know that this is their first time raising a child, probably, or first or second time, and that it's new for them just as much as it's new for you being in this world. And just try to have those open discussions, and try not to have any judgment on either side when having these discussions.
That's such great advice. And yeah, we do, as parents, we need a break sometimes. So thank you for that, Josh. Taylor, same question to you. Have you had negative experiences when sharing your vulnerability, and how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. So I would be wrong to say that I have not had negative experiences, but I will say before I dive deeper that the positive experiences have far outweighed anything negative. It is understandable to me, at least, to open up to someone and practice that vulnerability, and have that other person, not understand or not be prepared to accept that vulnerability. It's really important for me when I have these vulnerable conversations with my people to ask them beforehand, so that I know, what is their mental state going into this. So if I need to talk to one of my friends about my mental health, first and foremost, I will reach out to them and I will ask, hey, how are you doing right now? And do you have the capacity to talk to me about the subject that could potentially be really heavy? Because I want to make sure that, I don't trigger someone into a bad mental health episode, or I don't come at this with someone who is unprepared to handle a level of vulnerability that I am just going to dive right in with.
That's such a great approach, though, because I think sometimes when we're hurting, we just pick up the phone and just go off, right, about ourselves and what's happening, and maybe not thinking that other person might be having a bad day or going through something. So I think that's a really great approach. Perri, how have you dealt with these difficulties when you're vulnerable and get all this negativity?
Yeah, just like everyone, I have definitely experienced some negative pushback. And first and foremost, I think it's really important to understand that it's not always personal, and you really shouldn't take it personally. Oftentimes it can come from someone else's pain and someone else's hurt, that they try to project onto you for sharing such a difficult story, and being vulnerable and being out there. So it's so important to really just own yourself, and to celebrate yourself and congratulate yourself for doing something that is so difficult. Because similar to what Taylor said, you might experience some pushback, but the other side, all of the positivity and all of the goodness that comes out of it is far greater than the negative thoughts. I think it is so important to celebrate yourself and your act of bravery.
That's great.
If I may add on again, I'm sorry, I know I keep jumping in,
okay.
But I really love what you said, Perri, and that resonates so deeply with me. And in that encouragement, I just also want to add that, if you're afraid of being vulnerable with someone because you're afraid of a negative experience, you are also not allowing yourself to have the positive experience of validation and comfort that can come from that. And so, I always choose hope over fear, and I hope that, this conversation encourages some of you to do so as well.
That's so great. And I also know that your generation is so hopeful, so aspirational, so wanting to make a difference. And I look forward to all the great things that you're going to do in the world. It's been just terrific talking to everyone. I want to thank you so much for your questions, for tuning in this evening. Thank you again, Karen, to RJ Julia's Bookstore for hosting this evening's conversation. I can't wait to visit the store. And to Perri, Taylor, and Josh for sharing your stories and inspiring us all to create a kinder and a braver world. And I also want to be sure everybody knows that Channel Kindness is available now at RJ Julia and wherever books are sold. You can also visit channelkindness.org/book for more information on how to purchase. So happy to be with you. Stay brave and be kind, and good night for now.